This is Denise Neuhaus from the Barron's Hendricks Dite Insurance. We wanted to talk today about thinking of returning to work after the pandemic due to COVID-19. The first consideration when you're thinking about returning your employees is your business plan. It's important, even though we're not actively back in our offices yet, to start planning for that. Looking at your policies and procedures. What do you have to communicate to your employees? You have to look at your leave of absence policies, your paid time off policies, your safety policies. Really good time now to take a look at those and start putting your plan in place. You also want to determine your PPE needs. Are you going to require masks? Is there a requirement for a face shield, gloves? What other safety measures would you need to take in order to keep your employees safe? We believe that a template is a good place to start on a business plan. If you're struggling to find a good one, we do have a few resources available at VHS. Remembering that not one template fits everyone. You will need to customize that, and you will need to continue to look at that plan as guidance changes from our state and federal government. We do have currently OSHA's put together a PDF that I've put a link to in this slide that talks about how to put that plan together and some of the considerations to think about. When we think about our guidance that we're hearing now, there are lots of different factors to think about when we think about returning to work. Controlling the access to our buildings. Are we going to require employees to take temperatures? Are we going to have them do a self-screen? How is that going to look? Who are they going to report to? What about physical distancing? Are there certain areas of the business that you're going to close? Community areas like break rooms, conference rooms. What are going to be the requirements for your employees for sanitation and hygiene? What are you going to do for your business to keep your business clean? What protective equipment, again, are we looking at? And what kind of testing and tracing and isolation are you going to consider? At this point, there's still a lot of conversation. And I will say, as we're doing this webinar, when we talk about state requirements, we are Michigan-based, so we will put our focus on Michigan. Most of the information that we're going to share has to do with federal as well. So when you hear us referencing the state, we're thinking of Michigan. Of course, if we have sick employees as we return, we do want to make sure we take the CDC's guidance and isolate those employees appropriately. If we have employees that come to work with any of the symptoms, or they come to work and they become sick during the day, it's important to send them home and encourage them to get in touch with their physician to see what the physician's recommendation is. At that point, it's going to be important for you to notify any employees that have been exposed. And when you look at exposed, the CDC talks about close contact of less than 6 feet for a prolonged period of time. The prolonged period of time hasn't really been defined clearly, but you want to think of your situation and how much time people are spending together, and things like, were the employees wearing masks when they were spending time together? Things like, did the employee have a cough? Because certainly a cough increases the risk versus just an employee that had a temperature. So a lot of different factors to consider when you're thinking about who to notify. When we have sick employees, and certainly even today, where we're at today with shutdowns, and today is May 1st, we have employees already on some of these pay options. And then as we have sick employees, we may have employees that are become eligible for these different continuation of pay options. So we have the emergency paid sick leave, the emergency family and medical leave through the FFCRA. We have state and federal unemployment. We have, in Michigan, we also have the Michigan Paid Medical Leave Act, so we don't want to forget that. And the FFCRA does not supersede the Michigan Paid Medical Leave Act. In addition, we also have employer paid time off programs. So you want to look at your company policy and see when those are applicable and make sure that you're paying those according to your policy. So what we're running into now is the question from a lot of employers: how do we get people to come back to work? One of the concerns is we've made the decision to offer full pay to our employees at the beginning, not anticipating this would go so long. How do we get people now to come back? We have people on unemployment, and with the additional $600 per week from the CARES Act, some employees are making more money than if they were working. How do we kind of encourage people to come back? What can we do to push them to come back, even to keep our businesses running so that we can sustain our businesses? So employee that quits or refuses to come to work because they prefer to receive the unemployment benefit, these individuals are generally not eligible for unemployment. Unemployment is supposed to be due to involuntary purposes. So your employee needs to qualify for, especially right now, one of the reasons that we have additional unemployment opportunities. So normally you have to be available to work. Right now, that's not as big of a requirement because you could be sick and still collecting if you're sick due to COVID-19. So if you are choosing not to work, you would generally not be eligible for unemployment. The one exception would be the imminent danger exception that we have heard some conversation about, where the employee doesn't feel safe going back to work. And you want to look at imminent danger as described by OSHA. Not just the employee doesn't feel safe, but they have specific reasons why they're not safe. The employer is not using the social distancing guidance. They're not doing any kind of cleaning measures in their organization and so on. Know that right now, because unemployment agencies are so burdened with claims, you may need to dispute an unemployment claim when someone turns down work. The unemployment system is pretty bogged down, and you will generally see employees, even that are not supposed to be eligible for benefits, collect. So you would file a dispute under the refusal of suitable work. The Department of Labor also gave particular guidance on unemployment, very specific question and answer page. And I do have a reference to that in a resource slide later in the presentation. So a couple of the questions were very detailed. You can see these are two right from the site. First one, my employer has remained open because it's essential. I'm not sick, nor is anyone else in my house sick. I do not have children or care for someone that cannot care for themselves. However, I'm afraid. So this addresses that fear question that a lot of us are getting. Yeah, the Department of Labor said you would not be eligible for benefits under the CARES Act unemployment benefits. In the second example, my employer will let me work from home with pay. However, because my children are out of school and my spouse is working, I need to care for them and it's too difficult to work from home. I included this one because this is the question that we're seeing a lot as well. And the answer to this one is you most likely would qualify for, the employee would most likely qualify for unemployment benefits. How do you get around that as an employer if you really need that person to work? Offer them flexible hours. So one of the examples I give is you have a family that has one of the partners working and one is at home. If you can offer flexibility for when the spouse or partner comes home, that they can work when that person can take over the child care duties. That's an option, offering a flexibility in schedule. If you are unable to do that and you really need the employee to work in structured hours and they are unable to do that, then they would potentially qualify for unemployment and or the FFCRA benefit. I think communication is the key for managing employees returning to work, particularly managing the fear. And I believe human resources is all about communication. So if you've ever heard me speak, you've probably heard me say something about good communication. This is a great opportunity to minimize fear. Tell your employees what steps you're taking to protect them before they are supposed to come back to work. Send them a letter or an email or some kind of communication describing what those steps are that you're taking. put together the policies and share those with your employees on the expectations when they return to work. If you have employees that are working now and that's going well, share some stories from that. Have your current employees work, share some testimonials, how they feel safe and what they see the employers doing to keep them safe. I also believe it's really important to stay connected while people are not at your business. So checking in, seeing how things are going, keeping that connection is going to make it easier for people to transition back to work versus being isolated and not having that connection and then all of a sudden having to pull back into the workforce. When we think about some of the things that we have done or want to do financially, we think about the compensation that we've offered employees, trying to be helpful and keep our employees whole. This was a great thing that a lot of employers have did right from the beginning and are now wondering, how long can we keep doing that? So one strategy would be, if you have employees working and you have employees that are not working, shift some of those dollars. Maybe you pay the employees that are not working a percentage of their normal salary and use the rest of that salary to give your working employees some kind of bonus, hazard duty pay, and so on. The reason I'm suggesting it that way is in part due to the PPP loan impact. We know a lot of employers have qualified for the Paycheck Protection Program, and that says you have to keep your salaries and wages at a certain level. So rather than take away those wages from people not working and disqualifying for yourself for the loan, it may be important to kind of shift those dollars around. If an employee is voluntarily not working, this might be a good time to look at any kind of benefit continuation. You might discontinue their PTO accruals. You might say, if you refuse work or do not return to work when we've asked you to, we will no longer pay for your insurance benefits. There's some different creative things that you can do to try to encourage people to come back. It's really going to be all about balance, showing an expression of care and safety for your employees, but then still looking out for the financial sustainability of your business. This is the resource slide that I talked about. There are several resources here from the Department of Labor, the Michigan Unemployment. I included a link from Mythbusters. I think that's another strategy that you can use to calm your employees, to share some of the myths that are out there related to COVID-19 and give them some sense of calm, that not all of those things that we hear in the news and in the hype are true. There's a couple resources from the CDC, and then the last one is a link to the IRS guidance on the FFCRA tax credits. We appreciate your time today. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, we're happy to help. Please contact us at askbhs@bhsins.com.